Yep.
And then professors
I'm gonna go
found
catch some more.
it because they let their water
Thanks,
bottles
guys. They're all
Okay.
okay, great. Rabbit in what room?
Our classroom.
That's crazy. Imagine walking in and seeing something like that and being like, thank you. I really wanted to wear it today.
Hi, everybody. Should we start or should I hold off for a second? What do you think? Do you want to introduce me? No. Or no? Okay.
You can do it yourself.
So, I'm Margaret's dad. Margaret invited me to come talk with you guys about something I'm very passionate about and that I've been working a lot on in my own life. I'm an artist and an educator. So just a little bit about my background, I guess. I studied illustration for a couple of years at a junior college. It was called Ricks College back then. It's now become BYU Idaho. But at the time, it was a 2-year school, and I studied illustration there. And then after I was wrapping up there, I had this really cool opportunity to intern with a sculptor. And so I kind of shifted gears a little bit. And so I have kind of, like I said, I have 2 areas of interest in my work. I do illustrative things. I draw. And I also, for a good part of my career, I've done a lot of bronze casting. I've done a lot of work documenting the history of lacrosse. And so, anyway, kind of some different things.
That's impressive.
Thank you. So anyway, yeah, I love drawing. I love making art. I love communicating with art. And so I do it a lot. About 10 years, I worked after I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I finished at a really small school in Connecticut that you've probably never heard of called the Lyme Academy, as in where they discovered Lyme disease, Lyme, Old Lyme. Beautiful place. Had a great time there. So I got a BFA in sculpture. And then I sculpted for about 10 years. And then after about 10 years, I got the opportunity to start teaching. And I've been teaching for about 8 years now, as well as continuing with my own art. And right now, and what I'm going through personally, so not that it's, when I started teaching, I needed to get my teaching certificate, and rather than go and do more bachelor's, undergrad stuff, I got into a master's in education program and met all my licensure requirements in a master's program. And once I got my licensure, I kind of hit the brakes. I didn't finish my master's degree. So that was kind of going on. And then I really started pushing with my art and my illustration again. And I found out about a really cool program through the University of Hartford where I have this low residency Masters of Fine Art and Illustration program with Chris Payne, who's a really great illustrator. And it's low residency, so I didn't have to give up my job and move my family. But 3 times a year I travel, and then the rest of it's online. And so I'm in the middle of this MFA program, but this year I also started teaching classes for Weber as a concurrent enrollment at my high school. And I found out I could finish my master's thesis for free. And I've been working on this idea, what we're going to talk about today, for a lot of years. So I'm at Farmington High School in Davis County, and we have a really great science department there as well. And a lot of their science teachers, which I love, require their students to draw. And so the ornithology students draw over 100 birds every year, and they have marine biology and botany and astronomy and geology, and a lot of these teachers require drawing. And so I've started putting together these workshops to talk about the value of drawing outside of an art classroom. I mean, I love making art, but drawing to me is more than just art. It's a way of knowing and a way of communicating. And so I took all these ideas I've been working on and I've turned it into my master's thesis. And you guys are kind of my guinea pigs. I'm presenting some of this stuff to you as it's in progress. But I call it drawing with your hand, your eye, your mind, and your heart. And I'm creating 4 workshops based on each of these parts of the body, and just using Leonardo to help me illustrate that idea. But I'll get into that in just a second. One of the things that I've learned, though, through teaching drawing and through drawing and wanting to get better at drawing, which is a lifelong pursuit. But I've found there's 3 different kind of mental activities that are reasons why you might draw. And so one of the reasons why we draw is actually not necessarily to create the drawing, but we draw to help us look closer. And so it's not the art creation that we're really focused on. It's about us experiencing the world and gathering that information. And when you try to draw something, it forces you to look in a different way. And it's been really fun going through the research and learning about all these discoveries and things that people made because they drew. But drawing helps us to actually take information from outside the world and bring it into our head. So in this case, I've got these little arrows, but you look at the bird and you're trying to gain knowledge about that bird, right? So the information's flowing from the outside in. And each of these steps, there's different goals. And so like one artist that I looked at, she's got a chapter in this book, but she was talking about how like her drawings when she went out and did field work were horrible. Like they were bad drawings. But when she got back to her lab or her studio or whatever, looking and reviewing those drawings helped her to remember what she actually experienced and saw, right? And so sometimes when you're drawing, you're not really caring about how it looks. Like it's just helping you to observe and see what you need to know next. Another reason we draw is to take what we have in our head and make it visible and understandable to other people. And so we draw, so in this case the arrow's going the other way, right? We're trying to get what's in here out, which I think a lot of people understand these first 2 ideas. But there's also this other idea where the information starts flowing in and out. And I love this part of drawing. So you're sitting down and you're trying to draw something, a rhinoceros or whatever. Most of you guys are geology. Yeah, so you're trying to draw a rock or a mountain or whatever. I'm not particular either way. I like drawing people. But you put something on the page and then you look at what you were looking at and you look at what's on the page, and the page is saying, you don't understand this yet. It doesn't feel right. And so you go back to the subject and you look closer and you get a little more information, and there's this back and forth that happens with drawing and helps you to actually be metacognitive in your drawing and your thinking, and you learn what you know and you learn what you don't know. And I love that. So anyway, that's kind of how I think about some different ways that drawing has value, right? And so my workshops, and we'll go through a couple activities and things here. I'm definitely not going to make you sit through everything, but just to present a little bit. Part of drawing, it's a physical act. It's like playing a sport or a musical instrument. There's coordination. And sometimes when you struggle with drawing, what you need to get better at is like physical connection between your eye and your hand, right? Like learning how to make different marks. And so anyway, drawing with your hand is, I've got a workshop to help you figure out how to get better just with the physical act of drawing, right? I'm just going to go back here to the beginning where I had these pictures. Part of drawing is learning how to observe better and what to look for. And I have So some skills and things on how to take something that's very complex and break it down and use observation skills to get better at it. And so that's what I call drawing with the eye. Drawing with the mind, there's certain things that if you know, you can draw better. So sometimes what you're missing in a drawing is a lack of understanding, either of a drawing principle or maybe of the subject matter itself. But the more information you have that's accurate in your head, the better you can draw as well. So sometimes you need more information. So that's what I call drawing with your mind, like getting the missing knowledge to improve. And then the last one, drawing is a form of communication. It's a way of expressing knowledge and communicating knowledge, and I call that drawing with the heart. It's maybe a little too, it doesn't have to be emotional, but you can't get away from this in art anyway. But it's about conveying and communicating what you're experiencing with other people. So anyway, these are those 4 ideas that I'm building around. The 2 ones that I thought might be the most helpful today, we could talk about drawing with the hand for a minute and some things you can do to work on that. Is that all right? Okay, so let's just talk for a second. But when you guys hear the word draw, what does that word even mean?
Make a picture.
Making a picture. And obviously we're in a class where we knew that was going to be a part of it.
Using your hand to visualize something that you can see in your brain.
For sure. Okay. How about outside of an art context? Where else might you hear the word draw?
In the Wild West.
This is true, right? Okay.
The drawing board.
Sure. Drawing board, Wild West.
Drawing cards.
Drawing cards. My grandpa used to come to my art shows before he passed away, and he'd always say the same joke over and over, and he'd just say, "The only thing I can draw is flies." And he's talking about drawing flies, like he stinks, like he tracks, right? Anyway, what I like to think about this, but the word draw can mean to pull or to drag, right? And this is an artist that teaches or used to teach at the Art Students League in New York that wrote a really good book. But he says drawing is the relic of movement, and I liked that. Like it's a fossil, something moves and it leaves something behind. And it really is. At its most foundational level, you can't draw without moving, right? So you're pulling something across the surface. It's also interesting, the English word versus the Italian word, which is disegno, or I don't speak Italian, I don't know how to pronounce it. But their word actually has to do more with the thought process that was just described a second ago. I don't know your name, but I love that you said that. But it's a physical act, but it's also a mental act. You make a decision, you're creating an image, you're making choices, you're designing, right, while you draw. So, and it's both, right? It's a physical act and it's a mental act. So, one of the things that I've come across a lot is, why don't you just take a picture? Can I just take a photograph? And there's a lot of reasons why drawing is actually superior to photography in some ways. Obviously, photography is quick and it's stored, but photography misses a lot of things. I love this drawing here by Leonardo, but he's processing what he was seeing in his cadaver labs, and he's thinking about connections. And one thing that's really interesting, cameras only capture pixels. So it's a bunch of different fragments of light hitting the surface of the lens, but the camera doesn't connect any of that information. And as humans, we literally trace things with our eyes and we connect things, and drawing allows us to make those connections. And if you've ever been to a cadaver lab, I know you guys are geologists, and I'm sure this applies, but a cadaver does not look neat like anatomy drawing books.
It
Like,
doesn't, it's worse.
It's a mess,
Yeah.
right? Robert Kingdon or Jonathan Kingdon, who's an Oxford artist slash scientist, talked about trying to draw a rhino that was like half rotten, but he was trying to make these anatomical diagrams, but you couldn't just take a picture of it because the camera doesn't see those connections in the same way we do, and drawing forces us to make connections and to pull things together. And this is a great example of that. Leonardo's looking for where things are moving. Drawing allows you to draw things that actually aren't there, or to take multiple information from different places and put it into one image. So again, I'm a little bit more of an anatomist, and I studied classical figure sculpture, and we had to learn all the anatomy and sculpt skeletons and muscles. But he's creating movements where the pectoralis muscle is, but he's got the pectoralis there, but he's also got the pectoralis minor underneath, and you wouldn't see that. You'd have to remove the ones underneath. But in a drawing, you can combine information and communicate information in a much clearer way than you can a photograph. You can time travel, like no one's ever seen a dinosaur, but an artist using their knowledge can create things that aren't possible to photograph. So there's a bunch of reasons to draw besides just recording information. Cameras are also notoriously bad at capturing color. Depending on the lighting and the lens and stuff, color is really inaccurate in photographs. Human eye is way better at detecting color than a camera lens. And cameras have exposure issues. So like if I was just trying to take a picture of Maggie, right? I don't know if you guys, Margaret, sorry. But the sun's coming through the window, and my camera can't decide to focus on the light outside or the dark inside. And so if something's in shadow, you're not going to get the information, but your eye can, but the camera won't, right? So anyway, that's my argument for why drawing's important besides just a camera. So line is one of the big things. Like, lines don't exist in nature. Like when I'm looking at you guys, where one of you ends and the background begins, there's no line. It's just one thing ends and another thing begins. But we perceive lines and we trace them, and as artists, that's one of our most powerful tools. And so I want to just do a little activity here. This is a little sketch by Leonardo. I want you to look up here and just pick any line. He was using like a dip pen, probably out of a quill. Just take a second, pick one line, and then I want you to just ask yourself, what job is that particular line doing? Okay? It's, as an artist, why did he put that there? What does that line communicate? And it might be more than one thing. And it's a pretty simple drawing, but I thought it'd be a good example. So anyway, give you a second. Okay, who picked a line? Can you kind of tell us which
Point
line?
at it?
Or I can come up here.
On the hat, so there are several like crossed hatchings on the brim of it. Back to this
I'm
way.
gonna
So
I'm gonna give you the laser
that would be a
pointer,
great idea.
and you can just point to it.
Where is the? So this line here is portraying depth.
Okay. Do you guys agree, everyone? And so a lot of these are kind of doing that same thing, right? Does it convey anything besides depth, or how does it convey depth?
By adding more lines, you make the area darker, and so it's showing that something's behind something else.
Okay, so
and
there's-
also the shape of it kind of follows the shape of the hat too.
Yeah, so there's we'd call it cross contour. Like these lines follow the shape of the roundness of that brim. There's some great examples of there's more than one way things can create depth. Obviously, I'm not trying to, but the sense of form that comes from shadow and light, the fact that like these lines together actually stop being lines and start being tone or texture sometimes. I don't know that I'd think that was texture, but it gives the illusion of light above and shadow underneath, which is an interesting thing as well. And one of the things that I'd like there as well, this line by itself is interesting, but when you compare it to this line here, because this line is a little darker, a little crisper, a little wider, this line comes forward, and these fainter, softer, lighter lines recede in comparison, which is really interesting. Okay, so yeah, line's doing a lot of different job there. Someone else? Yeah, and then we'll go here. Do you want to point?
Sure.
Just don't shoot anybody in the eye, please.
I would love. I'll shoot him in the eye.
There you go.
I like this line here. It's a very simple line, but it really shows the depth and detail of the bottom of the orbital cavity and the top of the eyelid.
Absolutely.
Who was he painting with?
My guess is this was done with like a walnut ink and like a quill pen,
Why are the lines so wide?
possibly a brush. The nice thing about a quill pen, and if it's like you have feather ones, but you also have ones that are made from like a reed that actually can be fairly wide. They have the little split, but and pressure. If you vary the pressure, you'll notice some of these lines start thick, but then get a little thinner, and so you have some flexibility there. So, again, so what would you're talking about? The heaviness kind of makes it feel like you can feel the depth in the orbital cavity there. So, just to restate, one of the things, like when I look up here and I ask myself, what does he want us to see first? Like, where does my eye go to first? That line is like that's him drawing our attention to something that he thinks is important, right? The principle of art there is contrast. You always look where there's the most contrast, and that's one of the darkest marks on the page. There's some psychology there too. We as humans want to connect with other humans, so if the second you put a face on a page, you connect with that, right? So anyway, there's a lot of different jobs lines can do, and I feel like I'm talking a lot. I want to get to an activity here. But in art classes, you probably heard the term line quality before, yeah? So when I think about line, and this is something I stole from another art teacher named Will Weston, who's a great anatomist and draftsman, but when you're trying to draw something, there's about 3 different things you can do with a line, okay? So if you want to, when you're thinking about the purpose of what line you need to do what job, you can make it thicker, right? That's one way you can change a line. And doing that you can use that to emphasize things. So if you're drawing a rock, like a really great artist to look at for rock formations is actually Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson. That dude draws rocks and deserts like so beautifully, his Spaceman Spiff and his dinosaurs.
What was his name again?
Bill Watterson. But like if you look, he uses the thickness of lines. So if there's a big butte or something that's close, it's going to be big heavy lines, and then one that's further away, it'll have a thinner line, and then the one in the background on the horizon is going to be really thin, right? And he communicates a lot just by changing the thickness. It communicates space and emphasis. So something that's important, like Calvin or whatever, might have a heavier line to draw you in and say, this is important, look at this, right? So thickness, you can change the value of a line. So it's the same thickness, but if it's a little softer or a little lighter, again, you can do a lot with that by lightening a line. So if your drawing is looking a little confused and the space is not there, by lightening certain things, you can emphasize other things just by simply changing the value of a line. And then this one's a little bit more sophisticated, but it has to do with the focus. Really crisp, sharp lines versus really blended soft lines can describe and communicate different things. A great example, like when you're trying to do a quick drawing you don't have time to shade, using line quality can do a lot. So like, here's a little bean shape. But if I hit this line just a little heavier here, without doing anything other than using line, you create the feeling of depth, right? This, hopefully, you can argue, I guess, comes forward and this goes back simply because this line is heavier than that line going behind, right? And so one of the things that I'd like you to practice today is try to get different lines. How can you get a variety of lines? So if you have lines describing texture versus lines describing the outline of an object, how do you have a hierarchy, right? I could add some other lines on here to keep adding to that. You know, I could add some contour lines to show some more form, but I'd probably say the outside shape is more important than the details on the inside. And so by varying my line, I can still give you more information without distracting from the full shape. Okay, so changing those lines is a really simple way to actually increase your drawing vocabulary a lot. So you can make them thicker, you can make them lighter, and you can make them softer. Soft lines tend to disappear, thin lines tend to recede, and light lines tend to go back, so things can come forward and backwards. So I want to show you an artist I love real quick. This is Nikolai Fechin. He was born in Russia but moved to America, lived in New Mexico for a lot of years. And when you look at his drawings, he uses such a beautiful variety of lines. So you'll see a line here following the knuckle that gets really hard, and so you feel that bone. And then it softens as the skin stretches, and then you come back to the bone on that knuckle and it gets hard again, and then it almost gets lost. And he's varying the lines to create both a sense of different materials, flesh versus bone, and also depth and space. Look how much this thumb feels to come forward. It's got these sharp, crisp lines, and the wrist just disappears in the back because he goes with really soft lines back there. Okay, and they're, I don't know, I love looking at art, but this guy's, his lines make me want to cry. They're just insane. Like, look at this ear. He's using line to depict the shadow, and then like this hard cartilage at the top, and then it mostly disappears, and then it gets soft and comes around, and you could basically feel the flesh just with the line. He adds a little tone too, but his lines do a lot of his work. So this is Nikolai Fechin. So some different tips for trying to get some different lines. Varying pressure is an easy one. If you press hard, it usually gets darker. But you can also try gripping your drawing implements from different ways. Change to a side grip. If you have a pencil, probably not a pen, it wouldn't help. But you can try holding your pencil in a slightly different way. You can change how far or close you're holding the grip. So if you step back, that's going to give you a softer touch than if you're writing right on the tip. Okay, so play around with that. And then which part of your arm you draw with can make a big difference. We're kind of used to writing, so a lot of us do this finger thing where it's just your fingers. Usually makes worse lines. You at least want to use your wrist, maybe even your elbow and your shoulder too. And that'll help you kind of get a better feel for your line work. So some exercises you can do. If you just want to do your scales, like you're playing an instrument, you want to draw, try drawing various lengths, straight lines over and over and over. Just get used, like what muscles, what direction. If I'm trying to draw a straight line, if I have my paper right here and I'm trying to draw across, that feels really awkward to me. So what if I turn my page this way and push the line, right? And so how does it feel to draw a straight line, right? You can draw a pretty close to straight line without a ruler, but try to do the same one twice. I usually trace these about 8 times when I do this, or when I have my students do these, and just practice pulling a line and see if you can keep it pretty straight, right? and it's just a quick workout, right? And then try it with curved lines, and try to just develop control. Drawing is a physical act. It's like shooting free throws, or I didn't really ever get good at playing an instrument, but like, you know, you do scales and things, and drawing's no different. You have to build muscle memory. And so that's a quick one that's just get used to, and I like to mess around with it, right? So think about those 3 different qualities of line. Could you draw a soft, thick, light line? And how do you vary those lines? Because every line is made up of all 3 of those components. It has a certain hardness, it has a certain thickness, and it has a certain value. It's either light or dark. And so try a variety, so you have more than one thing in your tool belt. And hopefully at some point it becomes subconscious and you don't have to think about it as much anymore. When you're out drawing, your brain just knows, I'm making a light line here. I want to make this thing feel heavier, so I'm going to emphasize underneath it so it has some weight. Okay. So I was going to do some drawing with you guys. Again, this one's not about making beautiful drawings, but are you okay doing a little experiment with me? We're going to do a blind contour drawing. Have you guys done blind contour before? Okay. So I have 3 kind of rules for a blind contour drawing. Okay. I'm going to set a timer. So one rule is once you start drawing, draw to the buzzer. Like, don't stop. Second rule is we're going to draw one line. Like, once you put the pen down, you don't pick it up again. It stays on the page. Okay? So it's one continuous line. And then the most important thing that's a part of this exercise is we're trying to build the connection between your eye and your hand, your muscle memory. And so what you're going to do, and maybe I don't know that I have a great way to demo this. It's a small group. But do you mind if I draw you for a second?
Go for it.
I'm going to do a blind contour. I'm just going to sit here and kind of talk through it. But what I'm doing is I'm going to look right at...
You want me to...
Just stay right there. But remind me your name. I'm sorry,
Madeline.
Madeline. So I'm going to look right at Madeline. But what I'm going to do is pretend that basically there's a pencil attached to my eye, and I'm going to draw with my eye. And so I'm going to be tracing with my eye. And they call it blind contour because I don't look at my drawing. I'm just going to look at her face, and I'm going to make my hand move as my eye draws. So I'm reaching out with my eyes and drawing, and my hand's just following along. And if you want to try to mess around with some line quality, you can adjust pressure while you're doing it. But I'm just going to start right at the left corner of her eye. Maggie, do you have a timer?
Yes, I do.
Set a timer for like 2 minutes. We'll do a fast one. But tell me when.
Go.
I've put my pen down, and now I'm tracing her eyelashes on her upper eyelid, coming down to the corner of her eye, looking for the tear duct there, coming underneath, back up to the eyelashes, coming back, drawing the iris, working my way around the iris, coming back to the tear duct. Now I'm coming up to the little line above the upper eyelid. And my eyes are looking there, and then I'm going to come over, and I'm just going to skip. I'm just going to move over to where the glasses are, and I'm going to start drawing the glasses. And I'm just tracing around her glasses, coming back up. Now I'm found where the piece between the 2 glasses above her nose, coming back up, coming around, following down the glasses, moving across, moving back up, coming into her other eye, coming up over where her eyelashes are, coming back up from the upper eyelid, back down to the tear duct, underneath the eye, coming back into her iris, a little bit underneath her eye there, and now I'm going to come back up and I'm going to draw her eyebrows. I'm going too slow, but that's okay. Coming over other eyebrow, tracing down her nose, coming down to her left nostril, at the nose ring, coming up the other nostril, back down, coming down. Now I'm working up over the top lip. Now this part between the lips.
Sorry.
Good.
My eyes are all watery.
Now there's the tear. Gotta get that. I made her cry. Oh dear. Is my drawing that bad? Okay. Anyway, and so you're gonna end up with a drawing that probably isn't terribly awesome, but they're fun. And it's a good exercise. And again, sometimes the drawing matters, but sometimes it's the mental processes, it's the experience of drawing that matters, not the outcome. And so, anyway, I found a geological photo, public domain. So, I thought we could try to do like a blind contour drawing.
Does anybody need paper?
We have paper, pens.
That looks like double arch in arches.
Well, this is from Arches?
Kind of looks like arches.
I just Googled red rocks and did Creative Commons, but try, we'll set a timer in just a second, but try to force yourself not, it's so hard to not look down, but don't look down. Keep your eye tracing. And there's actually research that supports the value of this. They did a study where they had professionals do this drawing and amateurs do the same drawing, and they had this tracking software that tracked where they were looking and how long they were looking. And the artists that drew more accurately they spent way more time looking at the subject than they did their drawing, and the amateurs spent way more time looking at their drawing than they did at their subject. Pros also looked back and forth a lot more. We're not going to do that for this activity, though. You have to solely just look up here. But see what you can come up with. Am I timing it? I'll time it.
Yep, you are.
Okay.
How much time do we have?
I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay? So, which actually goes by really fast.
Yeah.
You probably won't get. We'll try it out and we'll see what happens. Okay. So on your mark. So figure out where you're going to start. Put your pen on the paper, and then go.
Well, this is fun.
Are your eyes moving as fast as your pen? Make sure your pen moves with your eyes. They're supposed to be connected.
I have no idea where everything started on this page.
Yeah. We're just gonna keep going and hope that it vaguely resembles an arch.
Lines are happening.
I make my foundation drawing class do 10 of these in a class period. And it's interesting to see who reverts back to just like symbols and stuff and who actually tries to observe.
Is it 10 a day or?
10 in one day as just one of the day thing. It's a one day
Every day?
activity.
Aren't you so excited to go back to blind contours, Ray? You thought you escaped, but you're not.
You don't go back to blind contours. You move
You never
forward with
leave them.
blind contours.
They stay with you.
We're gonna make a little adjustment here in a second.
I had some fun shadings. Where I think that I had the line
I haven't looked
before.
at it yet, but that's been all the lines I can draw. I'll continue
You-
looking forward though.
You ran out of patience.
No, I wouldn't say patience. I ran out of lines.
There's a lot of lines up there.
You can't remember.
There could be.
Oh my
Wait till you
gosh.
see what I
No,
drew.
that shading's gonna be terrible.
There's a little, oh my god.
See if you can push yourself. You got 1 more minute on my timer. So.
See, I'm a lumber, not a splitter.
Too much of a splitter.
Haley, look at all
This
that
this
differential
this is not, by the way. a suggested method for field sketching.
Well, this is the nicest drawing I've ever done.
And you get good at this and better at that.
I did start.
But it's definitely a workout, right? It's developing capacity so when you go out, it comes more naturally over time. 22 seconds. Is anyone still drawing? Way to go.
I started early, so I stopped.
You get an extra slice of pizza if you want for the full time.
Don't you love how beautiful my drawing is?
It's an arch. It's not that arch.
There's not an arch on it.
Oh, looks good.
And then it
I think
died.
I've been there before.
Saw that somewhere once.
Okay.
I drew like some weird dragon.
How do you guys feel? Yeah.
That was really nice.
Thank you.
You know, the bottom part of the image doesn't look too bad, I'd say.
Wherever I
You
started.
can definitely see where I started drawing the shrubs.
None of them look bad. So we
She's Picasso.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with this.
there
Where my shrubs are.
there are pleasant surprises frequently with these drawings where like you find things that are really kind of cool looking.
Well, I started trying to add in the shading of like that part where the
There's no arch
comes
anywhere to be
forward.
found.
You see, I accidentally
all of
just
those
keyboard
lines
and
are all
arch.
of my
It might
arch.
be.
I am not a lumber.
And I lumped all those lines over there into just three triangles.
So
On
let
purpose.
me ask you guys a question.
Oh,
Like
beautiful.
now that you have that
I love
drawing,
the
like
triangles.
Thank you.
That was a good addition.
could you go back in and then like observe and make corrections?
Yeah.
Hopefully. Okay.
Probably.
But again, this is just drawing is a physical act, and this is working on developing those physical skills with it. I don't know a lot of artists. I actually have one friend from Chicago that, like, her Instagram account is one of these every day. Like, it's her thing. Like, she just does that, and it's kind of a cool account to follow. But with a little twist, it actually can be a really good drawing technique. And so we're going to try one more drawing real quick. I have a rhino. I hope that's okay. It's not a rock. You could pretend it was a rock.
I'm really bad at animals.
But we're going to change it up, and I've heard people call this a semi-blind contour, or one artist I really like calls it a blind contour, not really. But the rule that changes is we get rid of the continuous line rule. And so you still can only draw, your pencil can only move or pen move when your eye is up here. And your eye and your hand still should be moving together. But what you can do is, so if I was, let me just actually sit here and do this real quick and I'll talk you through the difference. But maybe I pick the rhinoceros's tail. Oh. Which one of these doesn't have a little tip? So if I start on the rhino's tail, I'm going to put my pen down and I'm going to start drawing the rhino's tail. And I'm going to follow up one side of the tail. And now I can stop, take a break, and look at what I've done so far. And now maybe I want to draw the inside of the tail. So I'm going to move to the new spot. And then I'm going to look back up here. And now I'm going to come down the other side of the tail. And draw the other side of the tail, maybe some of the fur at the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to look. And I landed pretty much in the same spot. And then maybe I want to come up here to the hip. And I'll start at the hip bone. And so I'll move my pen, I'll check, and then I'm going to draw again, blind contour coming down the left side of their hip. And then maybe come down this leg, down to the heel bone there, and then down the foot, coming back over, coming back up to the knee. And I'm taking a while on this one because I just kept going and stop and check and see how my leg looks. And then I can come back and start drawing some of these creases in the belly, or maybe I want to start drawing underneath the belly. But anyway, the point is you can stop and check and you can move your pen, but you only draw while your eyes are on the rhino. Okay, so you're not actually looking at your drawing while you're creating it, but you can stop and check and move. Okay, I'm going to give you a little more time on this one and see if we can get the whole thing. Is my laptop in the way? I can move that out of the way. Set it down here. So grab a new sheet of paper. Don't try to do this too small. Go ahead and like try to fill the page. When you're drawing small, you're forced to just use your fingers, and you usually get better line quality if you start getting your whole arm involved. And so like try to fill up a page. Okay. So 5 minutes starting now. One of the nicer things, I guess, maybe nicer, but with this technique, you can also start thinking about your line quality a little bit too. If, like, which lines would you make a little heavier? Which ones might you make a little lighter?
Do you see things? Why does he look like that?
Why did you look like
They look a lot more like the subject this time.
He's been on crack.
Mine's also been on crack.
I love it. This is a very odd dark red. I love that the eye is on its board. I think that's actually
No, I might. This is genuinely cool. Think about it.
I kind of
4:30?
did give the horn
Okay.
enough like separation from the rest of the head.
Yeah.
Sure. I think
I
like
just needed a spot to put the eye.
I didn't have time to fill in the actual eye.
really nice. Yeah.
I'm proud of this.
I tried to look down as
Really
little
nice.
as possible.
My rhino looks like he's been doing
I did it a lot.
But I exercise.
If you guys ever look up an artist named Thomas Fluharty, this is how he draws like all the time, but he's a caricature artist, like not like a state fair caricature artist, but like a magazine cover caricature artist. But he uses this technique to force him to get a little bit of wonk into his drawings. So anyway, the point of today, less about accuracy. Drawing is, like, accuracy is a goal of drawing, but communication also, like getting a variety of line, getting that that eye-hand coordination and a variety of lines in your work will help a lot to improve it. So anyway, so that was kind of the focus today. I hope that's okay. I do have a whole nother lesson on drawing with the eye and stuff, but we're out of time for today. A couple things I thought were interesting. So Jenny Keller teaches at one of the big California schools. I can't remember which one, but she's a scientific illustration professor. I thought she had some really good tips for preparing to go out field sketching. She likes a mechanical pencil because you don't have to sharpen it. But to get her variety of line quality, she actually uses a cheap Bic ballpoint pen because you can control the pressure and build up lines, and you can draw pretty soft and pretty dark lines. You can get a pretty good variety with a Bic pen. And they don't smudge, where pencils tend to smudge. And then for hard, solid, dark lines, she uses a fine tip permanent marker. And then she recommends colored pencils, but nice ones, not Crayolas. Nicer pencils have better pigments and give you a wider range of color for color accuracy. And then watercolors are great. They're a little trickier, take a little more practice, but if you're trying to get some color, eventually work up to watercolors. And then she fills her sketchbook. She has a refillable sketchbook, so she can put all kinds of different papers in it. So if she needs a grid or lined paper or tracing paper, she has a variety. And then she also has some good suggestions, like things you can do to make it easier when you go out into the field, like prepare in advance. So if you know you're going to look at a certain rock formation, you could even like get a photo and kind of have it traced in your sketchbook ready to go, and then go fill it in while you're there. And so like things like that, or you can trace things, like certain things that are traceable, like a leaf or something, like you can literally just trace it and then draw in the information. So rubbing's a great way to, you don't have to be a great artist to rub and get a texture off of something. So anyway, these suggestions came out of this book, Field Notes on Science and Nature, and they're just different scientists that, it's a variety of, everyone writes a different chapter, but I understand you guys occasionally use this one.
We used it in structure.
This one was a lot harder for me to read. This one was a better read. But the information's good in both of these books as resources. You can check them out. In fact, I have a slide somewhere. Oh, I killed it. Never mind. So, but anyway, that could be a good place. So, if any of you guys would like to give me feedback I would love feedback if this was helpful or not. So I'll write my email up here.
I also have a student council form for feedback. We'd love to do something like this again, but we want to make sure that it's the most effective. So I have a QR code, and I can share feedback with you as well.
So, and I'd love to get that just because, again, my background's in art and I love art, and I think it's a great way of knowing things and communicating that knowledge. And so my thesis is all about that, so your feedback is helpful.
I'm going to leave this laptop with the QR code up here where there's not people.